We're back again. It's Game of the Year. It's the one video I make every year. This year has been kind of wild for both co-hosts in different ways. On my side of things, we moved house this year. I had a second kid this year. Somehow I managed to play games this year. I don't know how I managed to do that, to be quite honest, and maybe I think I was ever so slightly down on games played, but really not by much. It's been very busy. I've been very busy the last few months, couple of months I should say, with a newborn, but managed to squeeze out this video, write some sort of script and kind of get this together, so I hope you enjoy. As you can see, Pokemon trading card game. I felt very conflicted about this one. It feels more like a habit than a game. And I don't like rewarding habits by putting them on my list. So while, yes, I've really enjoyed opening my packs and deck building and battling, I just, there's something about it that just felt a bit off for me adding it to this list. I'm really not a mobile gamer. This really is kind of one of the few mobile games I have ever played. And I can't deny that I'm enjoying it. There's something about it that just feels a bit off by putting it on this list. So that's my reasoning why it's like an honorary number 11. But you don't want to hear me moaning about Pokemon. You want to see the top 10. So without further ado, let's get to that list. Number 10, Pepper Grinder. Pepper Grinder does what I need in a 2D platformer. Take a fun idea with a good flow and innovate on that idea in new and interesting ways, but do it in a way that doesn't make the game too long and exhausting. While some of the boss fights felt like a difficulty spike, they provided a nice change of pace and utilised the drilling in some different ways to the rest of the game. There's even a few things in their late game that veer away from the drilling briefly that definitely were a nice surprise. Pepper Grinder may be short and fairly simple, but it still manages to drill down to what I love most about 2D platformers. Number 9, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. In all honesty, after a loving remake, this game should be much higher on this list, but the game struggles in a few areas while still replicating some of the best aspects from remake. Rebirth is a 75-hour game that feels like 125 hours. Going through such long periods of time between story beats combined with an open world that feels a little bit too paint by numbers, and you step back and feel like sometimes the meat of the game just isn't fully there. The reason this game is on this list is because your crew are still a heartwarming, lovable bunch that I genuinely cared about. Moments that capture the relationships between party members in and amongst some of the long, slower periods make the game worth playing and seeing through to the end. We also need to talk about Queen's Blood. It was the only set of side quests in the game that I always prioritized and made sure I completed every single mission in. The card game does a great job of staying so brief and makes deck building and restarting matches both incredibly quick. This minigame acted as a nice respite from the rest of the game. There's even a whole separate story to Queen's Blood that goes in some unusual directions. Even though Square Enix forgot to edit out the weaker parts from Rebirth, the highlights here are worth seeing, and I'm here and invested in this world and want to play the third game whenever that may be. Number 8, Animal Well. Animal Well does that thing in games where you feel quite clever discovering a cool thing or using an item in what you think is a unique and innovative way, when in reality you are playing the game exactly how the developer wanted you to play it. Having a well that is teeming with unique and weird animals is a neat setting for this type of game and really adds to the eeriness. This non-linear exploration is helped by the ability to pick up and utilize any of the game's items in any order you choose. Discussing early game moments with MBZ and finding out we had seen completely different items feels akin to discussing non-linear open world games like Breath of the Wild or Elden Ring. There's a silly satisfaction to seeing things in the game that you've spent 2 hours with that someone who has spent 10 hours still hasn't seen. Animal Well is weird and wonderful and is a must-play game to anyone who likes a bit of non-linear secrets-focused game design. Also, this game also proves why dogs are better than cats, just putting that out there. Number 7, Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip. This game is just goofy in all the best ways possible. Making your car go faster in order to drive up a vertical road into space makes the aim of the game sound more like a stunt one of my friends would try to pull off in GTA using some cheat code when I was a kid. And I think the developers kind of know that, which is awesome. Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip is a small open world game where you collect a bunch of stuff, but it's the writing and speaking to the world's zany inhabitants where this game shines. Taking the open world formula and breaking it down into a little 5-hour experience allows the open world exploration to be in service of the quirky writing and silly tasks. Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip works because it feels fresh in a genre where most open world games are getting bigger rather than smaller. Instead of a million side quests, sometimes you just want to get the fast car and see how high you can drive up a road into space. Number 6, SteamWorld Heist 2. SteamWorld games have almost become a bit like cozy games for me. Can turn-based strategy be cozy? It's because these games flip around genres so much, it always feels like the devs are more careful in the way they roll out new ideas. And if you know me, you know that I love an overly long hand-holdy tutorial. Having played Heist 1 earlier in the year, I was really looking forward to Heist 2, and it did not disappoint. The game builds on the foundations of the first game in really nice ways and even links the two games' characters. The submarine and exploring the seas is a nice change from the turn-based combat and is like playing a little Vampire Survivors minigame between skirmishes. The music also needs a huge shout out and adds to the chill vibes of the game in a huge way. Heist 2 definitely builds on previous SteamWorld games in terms of production, and the overall feel of the SteamWorld games just seems to be getting stronger and stronger. Keep the SteamWorld games coming because I am here to keep on playing them. Number 5, The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. It's been so long since a brand new 2D Zelda, so when one eventually did come along, it was going to have to be pretty special. In the post-Breath of the Wild era, Zelda can't just be Zelda, or in this case quite literally I guess Zelda can be Zelda. The Tri-Rod feels especially creative and fresh in a very Breath of the Wild way for about the first 5 hours of the game, and it's a joy to experiment and play with the plethora of echoes. And while the Tri-Rod mixes things up, the dungeons generally feel very familiar and comfortable in a reassuring kind of we know what you Zelda fans really want kind of way. I was disappointed that for a game where Zelda is the main character, she is still not the hero and doesn't really do anything meaningful from a Zelda lore perspective, but I guess beggars can't be choosers. Again, music is an important part of the world and the score is truly sublime. The new overworld theme would easily rank in the top 3 Zelda overworld themes of all time. It's good to see 2D Zelda back and looking fresh, and at least this time they provided an unlimited supply of beds we can sleep in until the next 2D Zelda comes around. Number 4, Nevera. Normally I think critics can be guilty of giving artsy games a little bit of a free pass when it comes to game feel, whether that's platforming or combat or both. There might be some games that have strong game feel but also have good art, like Ori for example, but to get a card carrying artsy game to feel truly smooth in terms of game feel, it's much more rare. Nevera breaks the mold on artsy games and adds a deep enough feeling combat system that looks and feels top notch. Gorgeous animation is complemented by orchestral crescendos and slick dodging. The way everything comes together makes the combat, in particular boss fights, stand out massively. I'm also a sucker for games that highlight or focus on seasons, and for such an artistically rich game to go through summer, autumn, winter with vastly different art really made the game come alive and resonate with me. Nevera is a must play for artsy game lovers, especially if you've been waiting for some solid combat in one. Oh, and also this game is very suitable for people who like wolves, foxes, or deers. Number 3, Prince of Persia and the Lost Crown. It's rare when a Metroidvania comes along that's platforming and combat are equally excellent. Prince of Persia and the Lost Crown makes most other platformers and Metroidvanias feel like their characters are swimming in treacle compared to the fluid, crisp movement of Prince Zargon. The game is stuffed full of boss fights that are incredibly challenging, that will beat you 15 times in a row, and all you want to do is get back in that ring while your muscle memory is as fresh as possible. There are some seriously cool abilities that really make you think when doing some of the game's toughest platforming challenges, in a very satisfying pat your head while rubbing your tummy kind of way. It is a tragedy that not even by year's end Ubisoft have wound up the team behind this game. It is sad that in 2024 big companies only want to invest in about 4 different types of games. Sadly, Metroidvanias are not included. But on the positive side, we should celebrate that this game has actually been made and we're lucky enough to play it, because hot damn is it a good one. Number 2, MiniShoot Adventures. MBZ saved me this year, and he very generously gave me his old Steam Deck, because as a PC exclusive, MiniShoot was the first thing I had to play, and what a first game to try with my Steam Deck. If there's one recurring issue with 2D Zelda, it's that combat is generally pretty underwhelming. It's only really modern 2D Zelda likes like Death's Door or Unsighted that introduce nice feeling fast combat. MiniShoot takes a completely different take and replaces all combat with top-down dual-stick space shooting. My god, what a revelation. Every combat encounter felt fun, gliding through the world, working out where to go next, taking on dungeons and incredible bosses. MiniShoot has everything going for it. There's a very satisfying difficulty curve that is matched by an excellently structured skill tree that keeps the combat evolving and was fun right to the finish line. I rarely do post-game stuff, but MiniShoot had me 100% the map and do every post-game boss possible. It was that good. I'm sure this game will come to Switch 2 next year, and honestly, I'm surprised more people aren't talking about it. Play it. Number 1, Astrobot. I'm a fairly new Sony fanboy, having picked up a PS4 in 2018 and playing most of Sony's modern classics. Even as someone who's well versed on the last 6 years of Sony PlayStation's 30-year history, I felt incredibly well treated by all the cool references and levels Astrobot had to offer. But if you took out all the cool PlayStation levels and references, this game would still be incredible. Likewise, if you had a game that was just the PlayStation levels and references, this game would also be incredible. But having a game that puts the two together in such an elegant, well-crafted and loving way is staggering. And obviously, as someone who grew up and continues to practice at the Church of Mario, Astrobot's platforming and relentless stream of fun things to do thrown in your face makes this game pretty damn close to perfect in my eyes. Astro makes things that have nothing to do with the actual nuts and bolts of each level fun. We're going down a slide, well let's throw a bunch of balls down the slide with you. Oh, it's a space level, well let's put hundreds of little star sprinkles in there and turn up the gravity so that they engulf the entire screen. Later in the year, I even went down the deep dark hole of trying to get some pretty damn good times on the speedrun levels, and I really look forward to going back to the ones that I haven't tried yet, now that my hands are fully recovered I should say. The world needs more 3D platformers that aren't Mario, and honestly, Astro is the only guy in the business who can go toe to toe with the moustached plumber himself. And that's my top 10 games of 2024. Hellblade 2 was another game I played this year that didn't quite make the list. That game is jaw-droppingly stunning, but I just feel like from a mechanics perspective, it just didn't do it for me. The pacing just felt very off, and I loved some of the story moments and some of the messages in there, and like I said, the visuals were incredible. The combat was pretty cool, but there's just a lot of slower paced stuff in there that really dragged the whole experience down for me, so unfortunately didn't quite make it. But yeah, that's another top 10 list. We've got another year of podcasting under our belt. Looking forward to the next year. That's me now ended my podcast paternity leave. Shout out to MBZ for holding down the fort with a lot of Patreon content and other good stuff. But yeah, I hope that you and your loved ones are having a great festive period, and Happy New Year when it comes. But I will see you in the new year with MBZ for some more podcasting. It's going to be a big one. Goodbye.